Hey everybody, welcome back to part 2 of painting 3D prints for beginners. In this video, we are going to be talking all about priming your models and laying down those base colors. If you've been following along, you already now know how to completely get your model ready for paint. We've got it sanded, puttied, melted, glued, everything. You know it all. Now we're ready to throw down some primer. So here we go. So let's talk about primers for a minute. There are a lot of different alternatives you can use to prime your models. The main thing here is you just need a good coat of paint all over your model. That will allow you to lay down some good colors on top of that paint and you'll get a better adhesion. Rattle can is probably one of the most popular ways to go about this. I actually use a rattle can a lot. So the main brand that I always use is Rust-Oleum. So these are the three main ones that I'm always using when I'm using a rattle can: white, gray, and black. So why would I use white, gray, or black? So if your model's going to be dark, have a dark base coat. If it's going to be a light colored model, make a light base coat. If it's somewhere in between, well, look at that, gray. Another primer worth mentioning is this 2-in-1 filler and sandable primer. This is great if your layer lines are really showing. You can hit your model a few times with this stuff and then sand it down and it will remove all of those layer lines. It is fantastic, but I will mention this to you. The more you sand a model, the more your details are going to be diminished. So the next one is the Vallejo Surface Primer. This stuff is fantastic for airbrush. If you have an airbrush, fantastic, you can use this. And what this does is it's already pre-mixed down to where you can just pour this right into your airbrush. You don't have to water it down or thin it down. And it goes on beautifully. And the best part is a little bit of this goes a long way. Because I've had this bottle for a few months now and it's on half full or half empty. And the last one is the one that I recommend for beginners. Just use regular acrylic black paint. You don't have to go buy anything special. If you've got a set of paints and you've got black, just use this. I used this stuff for the longest time when I first started painting 3D prints. So in this video, I am only going to show you how you can use regular acrylic paint for your primer. So don't think that you need to go get rattle cans or you need to get an airbrush. You can get just as good of a result with just some cheap acrylic paints. And I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So now we're going to prime this thing. Pun totally intended. So I'm going to be using this Apple Barrel Black, but you can use other acrylic paints. Don't feel like that I don't have Apple Barrel. How am I going to paint this? Any kind of craft hobby paint will work just fine. You just got to follow the steps that I'm about to show you. So first I'm just going to be using my little paint tray. I got these for like 99 cents at like the dollar store near me, but you can get these at any craft store, and I could probably find one of these on Amazon and I can put a link in the description for you. The next thing is I am going to pour a healthy amount. There we go. Then all you're going to need is water. I've got a water and a syringe right here so I can kind of control the drops. But what we want this to do is be very thin, and when we put it down here, because if I started painting this just like it came out, I'm going to see brush strokes, globs, and everything on here. And I am going to probably have to do 2 coats on this because a thinner coat is better than a thick coat. The next thing, I'm going to be using this cheap Crayola brush. This actually used to be my kid's, but I started using it for priming because it's fantastic. And this is honestly just to show you that you don't need these crazy expensive brushes all the time. Now, they have a time and place, but you can actually do everything that we're doing today with just some cheap brushes. You can get like a 20-pack of different brushes for a few bucks. So let's go ahead and add some water to this. All right, so I didn't add very much, but now is the mixing process. You definitely want to mix it up enough to where it is very smooth and consistent. All right, so I have it, and you can kind of see, let's get it. It drips off the brush pretty easily. And that is the consistency I am looking for. So if you get some off of your brush and it drips like that, you're there. So now comes the messy part. Now, you may want to wear gloves when doing this if you don't want to get paint all over your hands, but I kind of live with paint on my hands or something else, so I don't really care. So here we go. I'm not going to be doing anything special for this, but I am going to make sure that I get a good coverage of it, but no globbing anywhere. I keep painting until the brush does not have any more paint, and I keep pushing that paint around because I want a thin coat. If I see the filament color behind it, okay, fine, I don't care. So you can see there, I can see the white behind it, and that's okay because we're going to do another coat when we're done. The key here is no globs or anything in any cracks. So if you notice, I keep going over the same areas, making sure that there's nothing pooling in certain areas and kind of removing any extra paint. In some of these detailed areas, I do just kind of glob it on and then I basically work it all the way out. So you can see, like, when I did it, I globbed a bunch in the fist because there's a lot of cracks right there. And then that same brush full I have pulled all the way around the arm. Now, if you don't want to be messy about this, you could absolutely just leave it right here, let it dry, and then do the bottom half. Okay, so I'm going to let him be like this and let him dry. And I've got a little fan right here that I'm probably just going to turn it on and let this go. All right, so we have our first coat down, and now we are ready to be adding our second coat of paint. If you look here, we can still see white through it in different areas, and that is perfectly fine. That's why we did a thin coat, and we're going to do two. So obviously I did not miss any paint on my finger, thank God. And we're going to go ahead and see if I can paint my hand even more with the second coat. It's going to be the exact same process. I'm going to add a little more paint into here, then some water, mix it up real good. So now the drip test, and you see how slow it's dripping? Not enough water. So I'm going to add a little more water into it. Okay, so the drip test, now I'm ready for paint. So I'm going to wipe some of this off. So this is going to be just another thin coat of paint. So here we go. Okay, so now he's ready to go, and I am going to put him on my little turntable and dry him again. Alright, so he is completely primed and ready to go. There are no white spots anywhere, and if you notice here, like right at the shoulders and where the connection points are, that putty from the first video really worked out well. It's got a seamless transition, and it doesn't look like it's just an attached model anymore. And that's where the priming really shows. It shows all of that stuff. If you notice that you have cracks in your stuff after you've actually primed it, it is okay to go back and add in some plastic putty into those cracks. Wipe it in, smush it into those cracks, and then get it nice and clean. Then all you got to do is just get another primer coat on it until you have a perfect model like this, completely ready to go. Also, if you notice, the shorts are looking a lot better. Those are all nice and cleaned up now. You don't see a lot of those little gaps where there was a nozzle issue, and it's going to look really good. The other thing I'll note is I am not painting the base yet. The base is going to be the last video, and I'm going to do some special things to that, and I don't want to touch it yet. So I'm going to just leave that over here. All right, now we're ready to lay down some paints. And the first thing that I always do is I look at any reference material I might have for the model. If it's a creative project and I just want to paint it however, I just kind of make it up on the fly. But for this, I am actually wanting to stay true to the right colors of the thing. And I actually grabbed my boy's encyclopedia on Marvel characters that you can see right here, and I started looking at the thing and seeing what colors, because I was originally thinking, oh, I'm just going to make him all brown and different shades of brown, but I didn't realize how orange he actually is. So I'm using that as my reference, and not only was I looking at the actual book, but I went ahead and printed out a picture for reference that I can keep looking at. And this is a very good little tip. If you're going to compare it to something, don't use your memory. Keep looking at your reference. So I'm going to set this aside to where I can see it. And here are the colors that I'm going to be using for this paint. Now, I laid them all out for you, and I'm just going to go over really quickly of what I'm going to be using and how I'm going to be using them. So the burnt umber is going to be the base coat of his skin. Then I'm going to be going over it lightly with the nutmeg, getting a little more of a dark tone to it. I might be mixing in some of the orange with this brown to start bringing out some of those oranges. The caramel I might be using to just go over this as a light dry brush. The orange I'm going to mix in with random colors. Then the tangerine I'm going to probably be using as a dry brush on the light areas to really bring out and accentuate some of the rock. That's going to be in the detailing area. Then I have this gloss enamel white. I'm going to be using that for the teeth and the eyes because I really want to see those eyes and teeth shine. The gloss black I'm going to be using for the pupils because I also want the eyes to shine. Then I have a pure black that I'm going to be getting in the pockets of his mouth back here. And then also I'm probably going to have a black just inside here. I might just leave it depending since it already is black. The Admiral blue is a darker blue that I'm going to be painting his pants. And then I'm going to be doing some light dry brushing of a true blue to really accentuate some of those lines and creases in his pants or his shorts. Then I'm going to be using a metallic metal for the emblem. I want this to have like a really nice sheen to it, and this brushed metal from Folk Art looks really good. And this is called brushed silver. So you can see here that I'm using a few different brands. I've got Apple Barrel, I got Folk Art, and then I've got Americana. These are all really good brands, and they're really good on a budget because every single one of these bottles, except for the brushed metal, was 99 cents. These were, I think, $2 or $3 a bottle, but you can see that it's a couple bottles in one. So now let's get into base coating this. So now let's look at our model and see in what order I'm actually going to be starting. First, I want to get the base down on the entire thing. Pun totally intended. And I'm going to just coat this entire area, just avoiding the areas like the eyes, the mouth, and the pants as much as I can. But I'm not going to worry about if I get it over the edges. I don't care. I'm just going to be getting a nice, clean, smooth coat on this. Once I have that, then I'm going to be moving on to the nutmeg. I'm not going to be touching the belt yet or the eyes and mouth. I'm going to get everything done, and then those are going to be the very last things I'm going to touch, because I don't want to keep going back over them, because when I'm dry brushing this edge, I'm going to be getting it on the belt. So I'm going to just focus on the big two main areas right here, because it is quite possible that I might have to mask this off depending, but we'll see. So let's get started. So I'm going to get the burnt umber, and what I'm going to do, since I've got so much that I'm going to need, shake my bottle, and I'm going to pour some in here. Then I'm going to take my water and add, then I'm going to take a wider bristle brush, mix it real good, get all the water mixed in, and we're looking for that same consistency as the primer. We want it nice and thin so we can get a good coat on. One thing to note, with these less expensive, more budget-friendly acrylic paints, they do have less pigment in them, so you are going to find that sometimes you're going to have to do multiple coats. But we will see what this looks like. And I'm just going to start. So if I get it in certain areas, I'm not going to care. I'm not really concerned with it because we're going to paint over it. The big key here is just like when we were priming it, I don't want any giant like globs like that. I want to be able to have a nice thin coat. So I am going to go in and I'm going to really spread this out. And you can see I'm just trying to go along the edge of the belt, not trying to get it everywhere. And if you notice, there are a lot of cracks here, so I'm doing more of a daubing than just wiping it on with a brush, because I'm trying to get into those little cracks, because this is going to be the shadow of the model. Okay, so I've got him all base coated brown, and now we are going to let him dry. So our base coat is now done. We have that dark umber all over his skin, and I was a little messy with it. I didn't really care if I got it in different spots like his eyes and mouth, because we're going to eventually cover that up. But the big thing here is I just did a real quick coat on it. You can still see some of the black shining through a little bit in different areas, but that's okay because this is just the base. We're actually going to be covering up a lot of that. The real important concern here was I wanted these dark brown in all of these cracks because that's the color we're going to leave. So now we're going to move on to the one technique we're going to learn in this entire course, which is dry brush. Dry brush is a foundation to be able to get some different shading and things like that on your models, and it's super easy. So here's how dry brush works. Essentially, you take a brush and you get paint on it, then you wipe all of the wet paint off, so then it's just a really light amount on it. Then what you do is you just lightly go over the model, and then whatever's left on the brush will just barely touch on and leave on the very top parts of the model. Now, what I recommend when you're doing a dry brush, this might seem silly and dumb, but use makeup brushes because the bristles are extra soft and it just turns out really well. Versus using a harder brush because it's a lot more stiff and then it might actually get in the cracks when you don't want it to. But makeup brushes are very soft and because they go on your skin and they will go on your model beautifully. So you can get these at the dollar store or you can raid your wife's makeup area, but just don't tell her I told you to do that. But I actually have bought multiple makeup brushes over the years, and it's always funny when I go into the makeup aisle with my wife, I'm looking for makeup brushes because these do get bad after a while. So you want to replace them. Once they're not as soft anymore and they're clumping together, just throw them out. But you can get more of these at the dollar store. So now let's get started on it. Quick reference of what I'm going for. I want to get some of this darker orange in this area. So it's like a brown orange. And all I'm going to do is take my nutmeg, and then I'm also going to take my spiced pumpkin orange, mix these together, but not a 50-50 mixture. This is going to probably be more of a 75-25% mixture. I still want that dark undertone, but I want to have some orange starting to show through. So here we go. We've got some brown. We've got some orange. And I'm just going to take a brush to mix this together. I'm not going to water it down because of the dry brush. I actually want the pigment on there and I don't want to dilute it. Okay, so I've got the color I'm going for now. Now I'm just going to wipe off my brush. And the nice thing here is you can actually just paint your paintbrush to get the excess paint off of the brush, and you don't actually have to waste as much paint. So clean this brush. All right, now what you're going to need is a paper towel. You just fold it in half, keep it right there. And then I'm going to get a little more paint on this because when you first start, you want to get a good amount of paint on it because you want to saturate the bristles. Now, I'm just going to swirl in one spot like this.
and get all of the paint inside there like that. Now what I'm going to do is start wiping this off, swirling it around, and make sure I got all of it off. And when you're starting to see that lighter, that's when you're ready. Now all I'm going to do is I am going to lightly, just in one direction, keep going back and back over the same area. The key here is not to press hard. You do not want to press hard on this. Then once you don't see anymore, you're just going to get a little bit more on it, swirl it around, and just start in on it. And the key here with like the eyebrows, you don't want to go in the grain, you want to actually go perpendicular, so go sideways, and then it'll actually start picking up those ridges. So you can see how that's starting to really come together. Now I'm just going to keep doing this same thing over and over until we have what we're going for. And I'm going to be getting in all the areas of where his skin is. And you can see this is why I did not paint the white of his eyes first, because dry brush can be messy and it's hard to control. So I'm getting it on his teeth, I'm getting it on his eyes, and you can imagine when I get down here, it's going to get all on his shorts. So we're going to go ahead, keep moving forward, and I'll kind of speed through this, and I'll stop along the way if there's anything else I want to point out to you guys. So here we go. So as you can already see, the amazing thing about dry brush is it's just a quick win. I mean, like, your model really starts to come together. Like, this is like the second coat of paint, and look at it. He is looking amazing. And this is not even like the end of it. We're going to keep taking this model and make it look better and better along the way. So I am going to keep going through this because this is very time consuming. So you want to just take it little bits at a time. Don't get in a rush. That's the number one thing about dry brush. Do not rush it. Do not get way too much on your brush and then just start to slop it, because then you're going to fill in all of those cracks on that one stroke, and then all of that detail is lost. So just take your time and keep moving through it, and you'll get it. I am just going to keep moving forward on this, and then we will see it when it's done. Alright, so when your paper towel starts to get too saturated, you want to go ahead and fold it over and then just start all over with that. But you don't have to clean your brush. And you can see that I've gone over a few different areas a couple times. And for that whole purpose is some areas I want a lot brighter, some I don't want as bright. So like under the armpit, I didn't do a whole lot. Under the hands and in between the fingers, I'm not doing a whole lot either, because I really want some of those shadows of that brown to just kind of to give a little more definition. Okay, we are done with the dry brush, and it is amazing of the transformation of just dry brush. That is why dry brush is such a powerful technique to be able to really draw out those details. Could you imagine me taking a paintbrush and painting every little one of those squares or the little cracked rocks and leaving that? That would be nearly impossible. Well, I guess it would be possible, but my goodness, it would take you forever. So this took me probably about a half an hour total to be able to dry brush this entire thing, just to give you an idea, because I was really taking my time, I wasn't rushing, and I was making sure that I got every single piece and part. And you can see I've got a little darker underneath the armpits, and then a little brighter on the top. And that's what I want. I want to try to work on a light source from the top. I was going for this darker area, and now I have that darker area. So when you're done, be sure to clean your brush really, really well. I saturate it and I scrub it in the bottom of my cup, and then I bring it out and I keep rubbing it until it's dry, because you don't want the paint in there. Even though your brush isn't wet, the paint will dry and it will leave the bristles all stuck together, and you essentially throw this away. So now the bristles are nice and dry, they're moving, and hardly any pigment is coming off now, so I think it's good to go. The next step is I am wanting to start in on the pants. So I'm going to go ahead and get this Admiral Blue and paint just the pants now, because in the next video we're going to work on detailing. But for right now, let's get our base colors set. So I have just a little bit of that Admiral Blue, and I'm going to mix this up real good with a little bit of water. Okay, so once again, I am not going to worry about getting it on the belt right here, but I am going to try to avoid it. But if I get on it, I'm not going to cry about it. And I'm using a bigger brush just to get the big areas, and then I'll switch to a smaller brush to get on the edges right here. The key here is I do not want any paint getting on this skin now, because then I will have to basically redo that entire area. Make sure you don't get any globs anywhere. You want to keep it nice, thin paint, thin coats. It's the thinning of the paint that makes it to where you don't see your brush strokes. So if your models and you're seeing your brush strokes, that means your paint is way too thick. Okay, so just taking another brush with a finer point, and I'm going to work on this edging. Now, the one thing is, I use these glasses to be able to see edges really well. I do wear glasses, and these help me see even better. This is honestly one of those tools that I don't think I could live without. I love these things. My wife got them for an anniversary gift, and it's probably one of the best anniversary gifts I've ever gotten. So I will go ahead and leave a link to these in the description. I highly recommend getting a pair of these things. Okay, so now I've got the edging done, and I'm going to go ahead and give another coat of blue on top of here.
So now we have our model completely primed, we've got our base color on here, and we've actually learned how to dry brush, and we've got our first coat of dry brush on here. Now we're ready for part 3, which is all about the shading and the details, and you'll see that in the next video.